I have completed a job that required me to hmm, raise awareness of issues that I was sent to investigate. Um, and it's, how do I put it? It's elite military. It's part of global defense, and we're everywhere, and we're here to assist in internal affairs issues inside separate countries. And I come from a family who's utilized because we're descendants from the uh, kingdomships, and we love to work, and we're primarily humanitarian efforts because that's what the kingdomships like to focus on are God's children and alleviating the suffering because the throne belongs to God, and um, it's God's governing method, and we know this, and um, so I was sent to handle an issue in a couple different places, and so I was placed there, and I was intended to um, execute a mission under the watchful eye of the GOP, and it went so well that it inspired um, movements, and I don't want to go into too much because it's just so huge that I think it's too boastful to sit it out there and make it look like it was just all my effort because it wasn't. It was efforts and trade agreements and military agreements and um, leagues participation. And what happened is that I had to become active duty in a non-military sense for elite special forces in global defense connected to NASA. What's that mean? That means I'm your cleanup crew, kind of. I got to come in, and the presidents have to be humbled, and they have to be humbled because they they need help, you know. And so they go to a woman, right? They need to because women are pretty smart. That's why they're all married, and they have to go home to their wives and baby, I messed up. And she said, sit your hiney down. Yeah. So I'm kind of like okay, I'll go in and handle it, right? I did. I had to be a little baby at the time. So it's a spiritual thing. Yeah, the spirit has to go in and handle some things. And so um, when I went active, super active duty, went rogue, and I had to utilize code names. And my family's connected to Cleopatra and Goddess Venus, and yeah, I know. You got me. Sorry. And Picasso and Holy Blessed Mother. These are pretty. It's difficult. It's difficult to relate, right? It is. I have to deal with that. I got to go up against these and be challenged by my mothers, and it's such an honor, isn't it? It is. It's a big honor, and I come from fathers like great Prophet Muhammad, and it's like it's not. It's so stressful, but it's a good stressor to say I have to be expected to do all of this, and I don't get to sleep whenever I don't, and I got to uh, kick it with some cool people, and I don't want to leave, because because I got a hug from a really sweet, loving, kind person today, and I don't get hugs very often, and that's cool, and it's way cool. And someone said to me they're gonna give me a birthday party. I said, yeah, right. And the only birthday party I've ever had, really, kind I had to pay for. So I'm not used to that, right? I'm not, because my dad died in action serving, and my mother was murdered, and they stole me, but I was kind of placed somewhere, and um, so I started utilizing the goddess names linked to the blood lineage. We had like Marie Antoinette. We had in my blood line. We had Joan of Arc. There's a lot of them, and so I started utilizing them depending upon the territory that it was from, and that moved the military into place because they're codes. And so I just found the last one here in the U.S. And I say, well, I'm kind of done working. You'll either accept it or you won't accept it. And the problem is that there's some radical groups in in the U.S. and they get one or two people in the system, and they use that person out of 1,000 to manipulate the system, even if it means to change an address in someone's ID so that ID goes elsewhere. Yeah, they did that to me, and I knew they would. And I told them where I was. I said, they're going to do something called an overlay, and and so I just kind of sat tight to establish something called judicial jurisdiction, so that San Diego would regain a secondary citizenship rights me. And the minute that happened, I registered to vote and got my ID going, because I didn't want to get pulled over to Lancaster, Fresno, or Dos Palace or something, because even though I put it out there, and to see the reaction, because people are watching, and I'll put it out there, hey, come get me. Yeah, come get me. And I knew they wouldn't come get me. And then, but I'd go through like a merchant, say, call him, tell him, come get me. And that merchant happens to be one of the gang leaders in the territory. I said, yeah, tell him to pay you some money for the effort. And so I did. And they tried, and they got pissed off because he wouldn't give me money, but he'd pay them. He said, wait a second here, what's going on? You won't help your friend over here who's a lousy bitch, right? She isn't. She's the best friend you ever had, and you won't send her any money, but you're gonna pay me off. And that means we're gonna induct you, right? It does. And I know, and I have like the gang leaders in the area, and I say, watch, right? They are already watching, and so that establishes witness, but it's witnessed by leaders. And people don't understand that the leaders of the tribes are everywhere. Inner city tribes are the movers and the shakers of the world, because people like Barack have to listen. People like Biden have to listen. I listen all the time. It's my job. People like Bush have to listen, and Trump's listening. He's already in there, and he's gotten attacked because he's been one of my primary protectors. Um, and I have to not get too political. I don't know how not to be political. I'm pretty political, but but I will say that things are um, pretty affected by what I did, which was downing an account, because I had to get some pretty big information in the global network, and the only way I could think of doing that is right under the people's noses, and right under the State Department's nose, which is Facebook, which at the time was privately owned, and I'm going to say at the time, because I think that the government officials have a tendency to overthrow, and I'm not going to say it's neither here nor there. I'm going to say it's the nature of the beast, and I'm going to say it's pretty bad, right? It is. But it was the finest way, because it's too difficult to filter and shift and sift through communications, especially if they're photos. And so I learned the best way to do is to handwrite my message, take a picture and send it. Because once I was typing, there's usually about 8 different agents around me, and they do the overlay thing, and they'll come in and they'll mess up what I write or post, and then I have to go back in and change everything because they say she's the worst typist ever, right? Kind of not, but kind of. because the person not far from me is messing with my message. They'll do things like delete the word not, and that means it confirms that I'm in with something that I'm not in with, and boy, do I have to be careful with that. But um, what's happening is that my supporters are, because I built a fan base. Who'd have thought I'd have a fan base? And I have tons of them apparently. And I couldn't get the Senate to move on stuff because they were taking too much of my information on Livewire, and they were selling it, so it became an industry to just almost say it, to nigger her out, and that's what they were trying to do. And I wasn't raised with that language. I've been called sand nigger like crazy, and I come from Egypt. That's bad, right? It isn't. It's wonderful. Egypt's like the oldest country that we have next to China, and it's a military phenomenon, and we need it to protect the world, and that's why we're the leader of your militaries that defend your space programs, and that means if they mess with your NASA, we go in and go. And so I got to do some wonderful stuff. I got to do a lot of Mission Impossible, just some very, very bad situations. I'm back, and I said, okay, time to close out and go back to my normal life, which has been violated. And so I ended some relationships and returned a ring, and left it. I know who the players are, and I know that I have to be careful, and I know that the friends are the ones that stood by me during the harsh times and didn't stand in line to take a bite out of the crime solver. And I grew a great following in the police department, which is where I needed to. And we made several coalitions and built several leagues, and I got spat on for it. And it's all because communism is there's an art to falling communism and overthrowing communism, and that's a Romanov's venue. I think that God handed that to the Tsar for his children to get the revenge for God. And my mother was a Romanov. And not only was she a Romanov, she was a Jewish Romanov. And that's because it comes from the Holy Blessed, the Rose line. And that's why the Queen was so, I'm going to say, displacement of me. And that's because she couldn't say where I was. And I needed to be able to have children. And that got beautifully interfered with because I was working until recently. So my children the father had to be selected by a league, and I didn't get to choose that, right? I kind of didn't. I'm not going to go any further, but it looks like I cheated, and I'm not a cheat when I'm in a relationship, whether it's real or whether it's military assignment, and all my primary relationships have been a military assignment, except for one, which was not a military assignment. It was a backdoor exit, and he played it out really nicely. And he's somewhere in Asia or Arabia, I don't know. But he was my ticket out. I just needed to make sure that it was a safe, secure passage, and found out that he was from a questionable family, and that's saddening because I didn't know until after, and praise God that I prayed, because God working, and God handed him over, and with my signature to the U.S. military, and then I had to leave. I just knew I had to leave because I couldn't be active. How do I put it? Active undercover investigator of unlawful paramilitary factions for NSA and be married to an active military man. Because that means I'm investigating or would be expected to investigate the U.S. military and active duty, and I could never ever do that because it's I want to say that it's just inappropriate, and it's not my job because they're in active duty. Now it is my job to investigate unlawful paramilitaries, um, not connected to NSA, even if they're part of the military. Um, but the tribal leaders know that I'm here for the indigenous, and that means that tribal law, if they're a tribe, whether it be Asian, African, Native, or what have you, because my industry connection is global, and my work isn't strictly with U.S. Navy or Police Department or NSA. Those are my beloved enforcements that are just right around the corner. And so is the fire department, EMS. But my primary note, and I have to say it as a note because I have an obligation to pay into a program that's a global network. And I do that by way of Interpol. And that means what I do is my people get signed on as Interpol lawful paramilitary special forces. And that means if they're with me and they lead with me, they're automatically cool. And they don't get investigated because I already know under the laws of God, Muhammad, Buddha, Scaffoldman, all of those beautiful, beautiful, beautiful entities that that it's solid in the heart, and they don't get in trouble. And people don't understand how much fight and authority someone like me has, even though I'm wearing baggy, droopy drawers. And I know I get called droopy Ashley all the time I walk by because I just have droopy drawers. And I wear one pair of shorts maybe all week long, and then they get washed. I wear the other pair next week. And one's a little big because I'm not quite a size 14, but I'm about a 12. And that means about a designer 10 or 12 or something. And so the ones I have on this week are 14. And they're like big around the waist. And I get droopy drawer, don't I? Do. I get it all the time. But I just wanted to let people know that that it's cool because I have a job. It's cool I have an obligation, but it's not cool when I'm ostracized for it, or spat on for it, or someone believes that they're better at being a princess than me, so they want to challenge me, and then I end up having to fist fight somebody, and that's like it's impossible. I shouldn't have to because it takes me away from my people and takes me away from my work, which is so productive and so important. And the thing is, as far as the princess thing goes, that's in the blood and it's in the crown of the head, and not on some golden ring that you put on your forehead. It's you get crowned when your mother bears you, whether you've been as long as you're in the position, the crowning position, as long as you've been there long enough to know the scent of the royal family, and you've been in the position, I'm ready to go face the world. It doesn't matter if you got pulled out by the womb. What matters is that you've been blessed by God, and you've been crowned by your father and your mother and your grandfather and your grandmother, and you don't understand how important it is. And I don't want you to think that it's a life of uh, uh, Cinderella. It isn't, but it's pretty funny because I am very much like Cinderella because everybody's expecting some gorgeous woman, right? I would say, do you remember Cinderella? Because she was in ripped, torn clothes, and she had to do a lot of cleaning, and she talked to animals, and that's kind of me. I'm an animal whisperer. I do. I can spend all day talking to animals and not one human, and be perfectly fine, sad as it is. I better go. Anyway, have a good one. Ciao.